And welcome back to the morning show. Tyler Carlson, as promised, MEC CEO. Any other letters we can add to that, Tyler?
I don't think so.
No?
Good morning. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. This is the day after elections.
The day after elections, all the numbers in and all the...
But we're wearing red and blue or whatever color that is.
Yeah, well, it's
color
it's blue. You never know.
I've stumbled in the right color today. So.
Black and blue.
Some people might feel that way today.
Yeah. Hopefully there's something to do.
Yeah, hopefully.
I'm not going back there. How you been?
I'm doing great.
You know, every time I talk to you, it just seems like there's something new coming up. I know we did a story last week of some pretty surprising, what was it, 1.4 million bucks or something like that got hidden away all these years.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. We're still trying to get to the bottom of it. We're sending a letter today to try to ferret out what actually happened. It's very unusual in a construction contract that somebody kind of tells you a couple years later that, oh, we owed you some money, and oh, by the way, we sent you the money and it's already in your account. And that's really not very typical. Typically there's some process of, here's our numbers, you can look at our numbers, do you agree? That type of thing. And as you can imagine, even if it's your insurance company sending you a check, they're gonna make you sign off that you release them.
From final payment, yeah.
That this is final payment. None of that happens, so it is very, very unusual. We have been complaining for a number of years about overcharges and things that weren't happening right. Or we are getting hit with charges that our members have to eventually pay.
Right, and this was coming from whom?
This is coming from Western Area Power Administration, a part of the federal government. And federal government and overspending, I know that's hard for you to believe, but it obviously does happen. Mm-hmm. And we were able to get some of our elected officials, Gosar, Flake, and McCain, to weigh in, but they weighed in on a different issue. They weighed in on some waste, fraud, and abuse issue that we weren't a part of, and then they pushed this issue a little bit farther. They pushed it into looking into construction contracts, not just general procurement. And lo and behold, as soon as they pushed into this construction contract issue, we got a check.
I'm sure you got the same feeling on this. Maybe it's just me, I don't know, but it would seem to me, if someone is sending me a whole bunch of money and says, hey, sorry, but it's already in your account, don't worry about it, they don't want you going back and looking any further.
It is unusual. It's something it's hard for me to explain.
They're thinking this is going to satisfy, oh gosh, look at the money, it's,
Right.
Right?
Well, and we do appreciate that they recognize they overcharged us and they sent money back. We do appreciate that.
Right.
But there really has got to be a little bit different process. The process has to be, why don't you show us what you saw, and we'll show each other.
Show us yours, we'll show you ours.
Yeah, show us each other's books, and you concur, and then after that, then you usually then sign something that says you agree this is final reimbursement of overcharges, and then the check eventually shows up. That's typically what happens in all parts of life that I've been aware of or I've been involved in. But this one's very different.
I'm having a difficult time getting you to admit this, but are you thinking there may be more there, that this is just kind of a cover-up?
It certainly feels odd, and you're right. You're gonna have a hard time getting me to actually say anything, because I need to see that. I need to see the data and the information. It may just be this is exactly correct, but without some two-way dialogue and it happening right on the end. Right in the beginning, I guess, of the congressional push for an investigation in their construction contracts, and then lo and behold, within weeks, there's a check and a letter, and actually what was odd to us too, we got the letter, and I walked down to Artie Loxman, our chief financial officer, and I said, here, it looks like we're going to get some money coming in. I have no idea what it's based on. We're going to eventually have to contact them and figure out what adjustments did they make, where, and to where, because we need to figure out what adjustments we need to make on our books. So you got to think about it that way. I mean, we need to know the proper accounting. So we just don't take that money and we don't know where to apply it. So, there's information we need.
Well, there's also, you're talking $1.4 million, you've been holding on to it for how long?
A few years.
A few years, so you've got all that interest that you could have accrued on that 1.4 that they sat with, and they probably generated interest from it.
Well, I don't know that they generated interest, but we sure paid interest on it.
Exactly.
Because we had to borrow money in which to give them the money. But also in 2014, they demanded another $1.6 million from us during this contract. And so this number could have been closer to $3 million. They did send us a check for a little over 1.3. They asked us for 1.6 in 2014. We basically we refused. We said, look, you show us what, where, and how. Where do we need it? Where are the shortages? How do you need it? And we did this all by way of letters and emails, and it just went away. It just it just went away. So we could have been in a position of closer to $3 million if we wouldn't have all out refused back in 2014.
Smells awfully fishy. I mean, it has that appearance.
It feels odd. It doesn't feel
Wow.
right. But we need more information. So we're going back to them saying, provide us more information. We need to be able to concur whether or not that's right, whether or not the number's right, and we also need to be able to figure out what accounting that we overcharged. What do we need to change, or what do we need to amend on our books, because it already has hit our books, and now we need to figure out a way in which to make the right journal entries.
Well, it wasn't that long ago the Arizona Corporation Commission said, we want you to raise your rates, right? And you said, no, we don't want, or excuse me, they wouldn't allow you to lower your rates.
That's correct. It wasn't that long ago. It was our power supplier, Arizona Electric Power Cooperative. We were trying to lower the rates, and the commission was commission staff at the time was trying to keep them from lowering the rates. We fought it, and we got a lowering of rates. And as you probably well know, the Mojave Electric members are paying less on their energy charge than they did back in 2012. So they did see that. So yeah, that wasn't that long ago.
Now, is there an increase in line shortly?
Well, we have gone out for an increase, but that increase is not necessarily the energy side. We've made some $38 million worth of investments since the last rate increase or last rate change, and we need to recover that. We actually are filing this year only because we were required to file. Back when we got our last rate change, they required us to file in 2016 based on 2015 numbers. Truthfully, if we wouldn't have had the requirement, we probably wouldn't be filing for a rate change at all. But since we have to file, and you have to go through all the process, you have to go through this whole process, even to explain to them you don't need to file. You end up spending a lot of money, consultant time. You end up rewriting the pots, getting the pots in the right place, the money in the right pots. You might as well go ahead and get it in the right pots, because then you can maybe preclude a rate filing for another 4 or 5 or 8 years, whatever it is that we can do. So
now you've got this 1.4 that just happened to land back in the kitty, and when you start taking a look at $38 worth of improvements, et cetera, the 1.4 doesn't seem like a whole lot of money. It's a small percentage.
It is a really small amount of the 38 million. But no matter what, we still have to. We've got to work with our auditors. We've got to work with our financial people to actually put it in the right place. You don't just take 1.3 million. Anybody that does financial accounting or books, you don't just take the $1.3 million overcharge and just throw it off of something. You kind of need to know what accounts that it go after. So,
wow, what a turn of events.
What a turn of events. But it's not all bad news. I didn't come here just all bad news today.
No, I don't think it's bad news at all. What else have you got?
Well, we're
Excuse me.
no problem. Since about 2010, we have been managing a for-profit entity that was created as a kind of a part of Mojave Electric Cooperative, but it was an independent for-profit entity. And since about 2010, we've been managing that actively, and it's in an area which became very competitive in the industry, which is cable TV and internet service and voice over internet phone. And as you know, with DirecTV and with all of the cable networks and Cox and everybody else, it's a national entities are really taking over that particular part of the industry.
Absolutely.
So what we've done is we captured the revenues we could, the profits that we could, and we then have gone through the last couple of years of disposing of assets that we didn't need to eventually shut these down. And in doing so, and we paid our taxes every year and all that stuff, but now we sit after all taxes have been paid, and we've sit now with, we're going to disperse to the Mojave Electric Cooperative members on a member-by-member basis, not on a meter basis, but on a member basis, and we have about 33,000 members. We're going to disperse $5.5 million of basically profit that we were able to bring in on these companies back to our members.
Wow. What's that break down to? I'm not quick enough in my head to go 30 or
about 140 bucks a person, maybe
no
more
kidding.
or less. Yes.
That's great.
So people are going to be getting checks here as a if you're a Mojave Electric member, a present member, you will be getting a check in the mail from Western Competitive Solutions, which was the for-profit entity. And when all the money is dispersed and gone, then these entities will close up. They no longer need to be no longer be in business. But I think what's interesting or great about it is that this is what we did is try to take a for-profit entity that was created. We put it through the ringer and got as much revenue and profit that we could, and going to turn this right back to the members. So
wow, that's neat.
I don't know a lot of utilities that this is what happens.
Raise your hand if you're an MEC cooperative member. Bruce?
I hate you. I hate you. I hate you both.
So you two will be getting checks here in the next 4 to 6 weeks.
What is NV
By the way,
Energy
Sam,
done for
are
you?
you going to repay that note I've got on you?
Talking to you, Sam.
So that's fantastic.
We think it is, and we think that we do a lot through the community. We do facilitate or directly get money into the community.
Oh boy, do you!
Whether it be the River Fund helping out folks that need the help, or whether it be the $2.5 million worth of investments we've made in schools and county buildings and city buildings for solar to try to help lower their operating costs. And now we're coming with $5.5 million of direct cash infusion to our membership.
Fabulous. That is. Congratulations.
Thank you. We're very
great.
happy. We're excited. We know that there's always a gadfly here or there that'll wonder if that's enough or not enough, or their share should have been bigger. But truthfully, I think it's really going to be hard to complain about your utility that operated a for-profit entity on your behalf, and it's going to give you $5.5 million back.
Tell me something kind of off but on. There have been campaign promises, and one keeps coming up on the presidential level, of more solar power. And, then you see a picture of a bunch of rooftops with solar panels on them. But with the most recent, for instance, NV Energy saying we're not going to pay you for this, we're not going to pay you as much, and it's just, so the ROI, return on investment of these homeowners just went away.
Right.
As far as I'm concerned, went away.
Yep.
And I believe that probably after talking with you initially about the cost of the power companies will be the way of solar panels on homes in Arizona at some point in time. How is this going to be done? I mean, because there's no incentive.
Well,
there would be no incentive for me to put a dish on my house.
Well, there isn't a lot of incentive right now. The idea was when they started incentivizing this back in the 90s. So this has been going on. The subsidies or incentives have been going on for
25 years.
25 years. If a business needs to get off the ground within 25 years, if it's going to be a viable business, and it is doing really well. The solar that we're putting in our service territory, our own Mojave Electric Solar, we're paying about half of the cost that it would cost us to pay for somebody's solar on a roof. So
Right.
it is a difficult scenario. I always feel bad for the folks who put in solar based upon the rules of the day, and it's the rules that were written at the time that were probably not great. They didn't have a lot of foresight to them. They didn't really see what was going to happen. And so I feel bad for those folks. They didn't get into this, they didn't get into the solar business, and they didn't get into putting solar on the rooftops and say, hey, I want my neighbors to subsidize me in the future. That's not what their thought process was.
Right.
The rules happen to be that way. And what's happening is now that's kind of what's going on. Having more solar is somewhat good, but it's a difficult scenario right now. There's such a glut of solar in California right now that there are times that people in California, folks in California, are paying us to take their solar power during the day. So it's an odd thing that they're paying 4 or 6 or 8 cents to build the solar, but they're paying us to take it. The economics of that are just not there, because solar is an on and off routine.
Right,
There's
right.
it doesn't have the ability to change its output and regulate. And because of that, there are changes in the industry coming, and those changes are going to be pricing a whole bunch of other things. But if you imagine this, that if someone's paying me, or I'm paying very little for solar during the day from California, and if you're a non-solar person, do you want me to pay your neighbor who's a solar person 3 or 4 times more for his solar on his rooftop than I could get it from the market?
You did that to me last time we had this conversation.
That's right.
I didn't like it then either.
Because I know what your answer is, because you're a business person. And I know you don't want to do that. And it's not the solar person's fault.
Sure.
The person who put the solar on, they were working within the rules that were in existence. But a lot has changed, and it's changing. And the proliferation of any one technology is going to then eventually cause a change in the market. And a change in the industry, and that's really what's happening. The industry is going to change. The industry does change, and the rules have to change. Sorry, they have to change. You can't make rules that were good 25 years ago and then say, let's just keep with the same rules. I feel bad for the folks that signed up, thinking that the rules would stay the same. It's really a shame. But the folks in Arizona that created the rules, which were a very limited few, really didn't look to the future. And some of those folks are now lobbyists on the solar side. So it's like a swinging door that seems, again, like we talked about earlier, when you were trying to get me to say that there's a real problem. This seems odd. The whole thing seems odd to me. You create the rules, and the door swings, and now you're working on the side that the rules that you created.
So, that being said, you know, we've noticed as of late, Harry Reid put a big push trying to shut down all the coal-fired energy plants in Nevada, and was fairly well successful with it. And then you've got one of the presidential candidates claiming they're going to put all the coal workers out of work. But I'm also being told, and I know that we had issues with the generating station here in town, the Mojave Generating Station, because of the emissions coming out of there. But I also know that they refused, because the plant was so old, or at least I believe, that they weren't going to put any scrubbers on, or the things that the plant was originally supposed to have, but they chose not to because there was nobody here.
Yeah, I mean, the plant across the river, they had 2 issues they were dealing with. One was the investments for environmental, which they could have made, but they also were dealing with a fuel supply issue. And the 2 of those coupled together is what really put them out. It wasn't one or the other they could have dealt with, but both of them they couldn't. Right. You know, there is clean coal technology, and there is clean coal. It's kind of ridiculous to me to outlaw or put away any fuel source, because a balanced portfolio of your fuel sources is where you're going to be strongest. Then you're not held hostage to any one particular thing. And no matter what, if you're talking about intermittent resources, which are solar and wind, because you can't control them, you can't control when the sun shines and when the wind blows. Those intermittent resources need rotating machinery, which are gas or nuclear or coal units to be running and spinning in order to make the changes required in the system, because they're all out, or they're either on or off, or producing or not, but the load doesn't look that way. The load changes constantly, and you need something to regulate for those changing loads. It would be a shame for us to blindly outlaw any particular fuel. My thought is, go ahead over time, make them as clean as you can, but over time, meaning you don't demand it today, especially somebody that's made an investment in a technology, and it was good at the time.
Right.
I mean, it met all the requirements at the time. Let that useful life be done, and then a new technology comes over. Let's walk our way through that. We do that with cars today.
Well, sure we do.
We don't just outlaw the cars just because we created a new EPA rule. We don't say all the old EPA cars under the old EPA rules, you got to quit driving them.
Well, there was an attempt to, but yeah.
And that didn't go over very big, did it?
Not at all. No, I still got my old clunker. So, again, now here we go saying that, there's certain fuel sources that are, coal-fired plants are viable. Of course, you've got the plants that'll burn natural gas. You've got the ones that'll burn diesel fuel. You've got all these. You've also got, as you mentioned, nuclear power. Now, it has been, to my knowledge, a dozen or so years since any nuclear power plant has even begun construction.
That's correct.
Now, nuclear power has proven itself, if you take a look at, to a great degree, safe. I slept next to a nuclear reactor for a year. I quit glowing in the dark about 3 months later.
Right.
It was fine.
And that arm that's growing out your back, you don't worry about that.
It was taken care of months ago, yeah. It does come back on occasion. But, what's out there?
I think we've just discussed it. We have hydro, we have nuclear, we have natural gas, we have coal. I don't really talk a lot about diesel because that's really not a real it's not a real big fuel source, and I always question that particular fuel source. But there are a number of fuel sources out there, and I think what our goal ought to be is a balanced portfolio of that fuel sources, not all of something or none of something. Anytime you say all of or none of, I think that you're making a mistake.
Sure. Is nuclear power going to be a part of the future?
Absolutely. Look in Europe. Nuclear power is the predominant fuel source over in Europe, and they're not all glowing in the dark.
No,
that I'm aware of. But I haven't been to France in a long time.
No, it's way back when I used to work for Salt River Project. Believe it or not, I was driving truck for them down there in Phoenix, and one of the first hauls I had was running diesel out of the plant down there up to St. John's, because there was some issue where they weren't getting their coal in or some cotton picking thing, and they were out of fuel, or they had to increase power up there so much they ran out of reserves, so we had to haul diesel up there, and I was going up there every day along with 8 other trucks with about 6,000 to 7,000 gallons of diesel every time. So they were using it, and it was.
I'm sure they were, but that was a couple of decades ago. You don't see a lot of diesel fuel being used.
I hate to admit it was more than a couple.
Well, I was trying to be. I'm a master of understatement.
Nice, yes. Trying to be nice. So, what do you see any big changes overall, the entire scope of things in the United States with power?
Yes, I do. I think the real breakthrough technology, if you really get down to it, the breakthrough technology that'll eventually change the industry completely is storage. And that's the technology that's the real game changer for me, to me, because solar by itself is interesting, wind by itself is interesting. There's a lot of technologies that you could start and run, but unless you have storage, and right now storage is somewhat viable. It's somewhat viable on an individual basis, meaning at your home. You have to nearly have a garage full of batteries, but it's still storage is there. When that storage conundrum is actually resolved at some point, I think the industry is going to change very much so. It's going to change.
Enter
completely.
The Tesla corporations.
Enter all the corporations, and like Tesla being one of those, they actually see that future of storage being it. Wind and solar are interesting technologies. And solar technology, I'm really glad that it started and it happened, but I think they'll probably, if we look up 20 years from now, the solar technology will look a lot different than the solar technology today.
Right.
But I think the real big breakthrough will be storage, and everything will change for us as consumers, for us as individuals. The market will change, utilities will change, probably, especially if the consumers' desires change, meaning that they're okay with maybe intermittent blackouts during the day on their own system, much more independence from consumers at some particular time. We're not talking about this tomorrow. We're talking about this over time. That's the real future.
If I remember correctly, you and I talked some time ago about geothermal, and you weren't a big advocate of geothermal, if I remember correctly.
I am.
Oh, you are.
If
Okay.
if you find the right spots. I'm a
Yeah.
really big advocate of geothermal. It's a great source. It's a great heat source, but you got to think about it this way: is that if all it is if it's hot enough and you can do the heat exchange, then you can get the heating up of whatever medium you need to be heated up. The ground is doing that. I think that's great. The problem with geothermal is that finding the right test holes, because it's like $1 million a pop to drill one, and to drill one and not have it be successful.
yeah.
It's pretty capital intensive. Once you find one, it's not that bad. But it is. I think it is very good. And there's going to be technology, and there's technology out there today that can turn our trash into electricity, and so we don't have to bury so much trash in
Right.
landfills and such. I mean, that technology is right on the verge of
The methane.
being there. Well, methane is one, but this is we're talking about really ultra high temperature disposing of the waste, and the waste turns into a synthetic gas, and the synthetic gas is used then to burn a generator. But again, storage is going to be is still going to be one of the keys. Is going to be storage. How do you store that generation for when it's actually being used?
Yeah, yeah. And a big pond out in the backyard full of cow poo is not it.
Well, that probably not.
I did actually see that.
Oh, I've seen it.
Yeah, and it just, wow, it's a great idea, but not around my house. It's not. I mean, I love the farm, but what the hell?
Yeah, but I mean, there's a lot of technologies out there that are coming and
Right.
that are out there. I mean, water's a big deal, and water's a big deal out in the West. And they have technologies today that actually can break down dirty water into clean, potable water, actually pharmaceutical grade water. And they actually, one of the offshoots is electricity. So there are some technologies out there. We have to then set our minds differently that what we're actually putting on the golf course or what we're actually using for this or that purpose, it was sewerage at one particular time.
Right.
But at some point, these technologies will rise up. The technology I just talked about cleaning up water, that's used all over the world in places that are desperately needing water. We just haven't embraced it here in the United States.
Better get closer to embracing it, methinks.
I really do agree with you. I really, I really do appreciate the work that Mark Clark and those folks do, especially trying to make sure that we're all aware of what's happening from a water standpoint. From a water standpoint, he's right on point, and anybody who's worried about water, that's right on point out here in the West.
Yeah.
We're going to have to figure that out. You can't keep growing with population and not figure out how to either use less per person, or you're going to have to figure out how to expand the amount of water you have or reuse it. That's the bottom line.
2 minutes left. Hydrogen.
Yes.
Is there a future?
Well, I think hydrogen is an interesting science, and to the extent in which they can figure out a way that they can store it and then get it into your vehicle or use it for combustion, it tends to be looked at as a combustion material for automobiles. I still think that that whole how do you store it, and it is a very highly combustible element. That I think that's part of the particular problem. But will it be resolved? Probably at some particular point. I had a natural gas car for a while because I know I don't look green, but not with the red shirt, but I had a natural gas car for a while, and finding natural gas fill-up stations was incredibly difficult. California is a little easier, but not outside of California.
You want what?
Yeah, exactly. So I think there's a lot of technology out there, and again, I wouldn't try to limit any of them. Mm-hmm. I think that they all have their place. And anytime somebody tells you we need to get rid of something, and it's a fuel source, and it's a naturally occurring natural resource here in the United States, we ought to think really hard about getting rid of it.
Knock it off, Harry Reid. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Always good seeing you,
Good
Tyler.
to see you.
I love it when you come over because you do help me get straightened out on all this stuff that's running around in here. And you know, personally, there's a lot of stuff running around up here.